Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. There is something about a man who spends too much time by himself. I ain't talking about a man who enjoys a little quiet time, a little reflection. No. I'm talking about a man who stays alone, isolates himself, never lets nobody in. That man is dangerous. Now, let me break this down for you. See, life ain't meant to be lived in solitude. God didn't put you on this earth to walk this journey alone. No successful man, no truly happy man does it by himself. The greatest minds, the strongest leaders, the wealthiest, the most fulfilled men, they all got people around them. They got mentors, they got brothers, they got a circle that sharpens them like iron sharpens iron. A man who spends too much time alone becomes vulnerable in ways he may not even realize. When you're constantly in isolation, you start to live in your own mind, and that can be a dangerous place if there's no one to challenge your thoughts, no one to hold you accountable, no one to remind you of reality when your mind starts playing tricks on you. The human mind is powerful, but it can also be a dangerous battlefield. When you're alone for too long, you start believing every thought that crosses your mind, whether it's true or not. You start overanalyzing, replaying failures, and feeding into doubts that wouldn't stand a chance if you had the right people around you. Nobody is meant to go through life without a support system, without guidance, without checks and balances. The more isolated you are, the more susceptible you become to negative thinking, bad habits, and destructive behaviors. A man without accountability can justify anything to himself. You sit alone and suddenly the smallest setback feels like the biggest failure. You convince yourself that you're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. You start making decisions based on fear instead of wisdom. There's no one there to remind you of your strengths, no one to help you process challenges, no one to give you perspective when you're too deep in your own head. People who isolate themselves think they're protecting their peace, but oftentimes they're just feeding their own insecurities. There's a difference between enjoying solitude and becoming a prisoner of it. A man who never allows himself to be sharpened by others will always remain dull. You might think you're avoiding problems by staying away from people, but in reality, you're creating a bigger problem within yourself. The mind, when left unchecked, will always find something to dwell on, and when you're alone, those thoughts don't get filtered. Life will always test you, but you're not supposed to face every battle alone. When you cut yourself off from others, you limit your ability to grow, to learn, and to evolve. Strength doesn't come from isolation. It comes from having the right people around you to challenge you, support you, and guide you. A man who isolates himself might think he's in control, but what he's really doing is making himself an easy target for doubt, fear, and self-destruction. No man has ever achieved true greatness on his own. The idea of being completely self-made is a myth, because behind every successful person is a network of people who have played a role in their journey. Whether it's mentors, friends, family, or business partners, every great man has leaned on others at some point. The stronger your connections, the greater your chances of reaching your full potential. A man who isolates himself may believe he is being independent, but what he is really doing is limiting his opportunities for growth. Success is built on relationships, on learning from others, on collaboration, and on shared wisdom. When you are connected to the right people, you gain knowledge that you would never have discovered on your own. You are exposed to new perspectives, new opportunities, and new ways of thinking that challenge you to elevate yourself. Nobody has all the answers, and no one sees every angle of a situation. Having people in your corner means you have access to insight and experience beyond your own. The most successful men in the world understand the power of surrounding themselves with the right individuals. They know that having a team of advisors, supporters, and challengers is essential to making the best decisions. Without that, a man is left to navigate the complexities of life alone, making mistakes that could have been avoided with the right guidance. Opportunities often come through people. No matter how skilled or talented you are, if nobody knows about it, your success will always be limited. Connections open doors that hard work alone cannot. It's not just about what you know, but also about who you know. Relationships create trust, and trust creates opportunities. When people see your value, they advocate for you, they introduce you to others, and they put your name in rooms you haven't even stepped into yet. Being surrounded by successful, driven, and wise people forces you to level up. When you spend time with people who are constantly improving, constantly learning, and constantly striving for more, it naturally pushes you to do the same. If you isolate yourself, you stay stagnant. You don't see the possibilities beyond your own experience, and you don't get exposed to the habits and mindsets that lead to greatness. You become the sum of the people you surround yourself with. And if you are always alone, you are missing out on the influence of those who can help you grow. Isolation breeds complacency. When there is no one to challenge you, no one to hold you accountable, it's easy to fall into a pattern of mediocrity. It's easy to settle for less when there's no one pushing you to do more. Success requires connection because connection creates motivation, inspiration, and accountability. A man who surrounds himself with people who are striving for greatness will inevitably strive for greatness himself. But a man who chooses to be alone will always struggle to reach his full potential. Growth doesn't happen in isolation. A man can only go so far on his own before he reaches a point where he needs others to sharpen him, challenge him, and push him beyond his limits. Just like iron sharpens iron, people sharpen each other through wisdom, experience, and accountability. No matter how strong, smart, or independent a man thinks he is, without the right people around him, he will never reach his full potential. A blade that is never sharpened eventually becomes dull, no matter how strong it once was. A man who never surrounds himself with people who challenge him will become stagnant, stuck in the same routine, same patterns, and same mindset. The most successful and powerful men are those who have been tested, refined, and molded by the influence of other great minds. They understand that growth comes from being in the presence of those who expect more from them, those who push them to be better, those who refuse to let them settle. Feedback is one of the most valuable tools for improvement. And without people around you to offer it, you risk making the same mistakes over and over again. A man who isolates himself has no one to tell him when he is wrong, no one to give him a new perspective, no one to challenge his way of thinking. He may believe he is doing fine on his own, but in reality, he is limiting his growth. The most dangerous thing a man can do is assume he knows everything. The wisest men understand that learning is a lifelong process, and the best lessons often come from those around them. Success leaves clues, and the fastest way to grow is to learn from those who have already achieved what you are striving for. When you surround yourself with people who are ahead of you, their knowledge, habits, and mindset rub off on you. They show you what is possible, they teach you the mistakes to avoid, and they set a higher standard for you to reach. If you are always the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. A man should always be seeking out people who challenge him, who make him think differently, who push him to become more than he was yesterday. There is no progress without pressure. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Swords are sharpened through friction, and men are strengthened through challenges. The people you surround yourself with should not just agree with everything you say or allow you to remain comfortable. They should push you, call you out when you are slipping, and hold you to a higher standard. This is how greatness is built. Not through comfort, not through isolation, but through constant refinement and sharpening. Accountability is one of the greatest gifts a man can receive. When you have people in your life who expect more from you, who refuse to let you make excuses, you rise to the occasion. A man who has no one holding him accountable is a man who will fall into complacency. It is easy to make excuses when no one is watching. It is easy to lower your standards when no one is there to remind you of what you are capable of. True growth happens when you surround yourself with people who won't let you fail. People who see your potential and push you toward it. When a man spends too much time alone, he begins to live inside his own mind, and that can be one of the most dangerous places to be. Without external voices to balance his thoughts, he starts believing every idea that crosses his mind, whether good or bad. The problem is, not every thought is true, and not every belief is based on reality. Left unchecked, his mind can become his greatest enemy, feeding him doubts, fears, and insecurities that grow stronger the longer they go unchallenged. Self-doubt does not start as a loud voice. It begins as a whisper. It starts with a small thought, maybe a past failure, a rejection, or a missed opportunity. Alone with his thoughts, a man replays these moments over and over, slowly convincing himself that they define him. He begins to question his worth, his abilities, and his future. What could have been a lesson learned turns into a burden carried, weighing him down with regret and uncertainty. Without someone to offer perspective, to remind him of his strengths, or to help him see past his failures, those doubts become his reality. The mind is powerful, but it is not always honest. A man who isolates himself loses the ability to challenge his own thinking because there is no one there to offer a different point of view. The longer he spends alone, the more he starts to trust his worst thoughts. He convinces himself that he is not good enough, that he has nothing to offer, that success is out of reach. He starts seeing obstacles where there are opportunities and begins making decisions based on fear instead of ambition. A person's environment shapes their mindset. When a man surrounds himself with strong, driven, and supportive individuals, he is constantly reminded of his potential. He sees what is possible, he is encouraged to push past his doubts, and he is reminded that failure is not final. But when a man chooses isolation, his world becomes smaller and his vision becomes limited. He stops seeing beyond his current situation, and over time, he loses the motivation to strive for more. No one achieves greatness alone, and no one overcomes self-doubt without support. The strongest men are not those who never experience fear or insecurity. They are the ones who have built a network of people who help them push through it. When a man isolates himself, he deprives himself of the encouragement, wisdom, and accountability that come from meaningful connections. He tries to carry the weight of his struggles alone, and eventually that weight becomes too heavy. The difference between success and failure is often as simple as having the right voices in your life. When doubt creeps in, the right people remind you of your strength. When fear tries to hold you back, they push you forward. When you make mistakes, they help you learn instead of letting you dwell on them. But when you are alone, none of that happens. The doubts grow louder, the fears take control, and the mistakes feel permanent. A man who isolates himself is not just alone physically, he becomes trapped in a cycle of self-doubt that keeps him from reaching his full potential. A man who always spends time alone becomes an easy target, just like in the wild where a predator looks for the isolated and the weak. Life will test those who separate themselves from the pack. The enemy, whether it be self-doubt, bad habits, or destructive thoughts, doesn't go after the strongest, the most disciplined, or the most prepared. It goes after the one who has no backup, no guidance, and no accountability. In nature, a lion doesn't attack the leader of the herd. It doesn't go after the strongest or the most protected. It looks for the one that's wandering, the one that's distracted, the one that has drifted too far from the others. Isolation is a sign of weakness, not strength. The moment you remove yourself from people who can challenge you, protect you, and guide you, you make yourself vulnerable to every negative force that preys on a man's mind and spirit. A man who is constantly alone is left to battle his struggles with no reinforcements. Life will hit hard, and when it does, the difference between standing back up and staying down is often the people around you. When you surround yourself with strong, driven, and wise individuals, you have a defense system. They see when you're slipping, they call you out when you need it, and they push you forward when you start falling behind. But when you are alone, there is no one to check on you, no one to challenge you, no one to help you course correct. Temptation and weakness always attack in isolation. Bad habits don't form in the presence of accountability. They take root when there is no one watching. A man who isolates himself starts making decisions that he would never make if someone was there to remind him of his values, his purpose, and his goals. When you're alone, it's easy to justify bad choices because there's no one to stop you. The mind plays tricks, convincing you that small compromises don't matter, that skipping the hard work is okay, that giving in just this once won't hurt. But those small decisions compound over time, leading a man further away from his potential. Even the strongest warriors have a team. The greatest leaders in history never stood alone. They had advisors, they had allies, they had people in their corner, helping them stay on the right path. No man, no matter how strong or intelligent, is immune to the dangers of isolation. The longer you stay away from those who sharpen you, the duller you become. The longer you convince yourself that you don't need anyone, the weaker you get. Strength is not the ability to be alone. Strength is knowing when to lean on others. Every successful person understands the importance of being surrounded by the right people. They know that in moments of doubt, fear, or uncertainty, it is their circle that keeps them moving forward. They know that life is full of challenges, and trying to face them alone is a losing battle. The most dangerous men in the world are not the ones who isolate themselves. They are the ones who build strong networks, who have people looking out for them, who understand that protection comes from unity. A man who always spends time alone is not in control. He is simply waiting for the moment life catches up with him. True strength is not found in isolation, but in the ability to build, nurture, and sustain meaningful relationships. A man who walks alone may believe he is strong, independent, and self-sufficient, but in reality, he is limiting himself. The most powerful men in history, the most successful leaders, and the most accomplished individuals all had strong networks, communities, and people who contributed to their growth. No one rises to greatness alone, and no one sustains success without a solid foundation of relationships. A man's power is directly tied to his ability to connect with others. When you surround yourself with people who uplift, challenge, and inspire you, you automatically elevate yourself. You gain access to knowledge, wisdom, and experiences beyond your own. You learn from others' successes and failures, saving yourself time and unnecessary mistakes. You become part of a system where support, encouragement, and accountability help you navigate life's challenges. A man who isolates himself operates with a limited perspective. His experiences are solely his own, and without outside influence, he risks becoming trapped in his own way of thinking. Growth happens through exposure to different ideas, different ways of thinking, and different solutions to problems. When a man is alone, his world becomes small. He only knows what he knows, and that limits his ability to evolve. The most successful men understand that expanding their circle expands their vision, their opportunities, and their ability to create lasting impact. Strength is not about how much you can carry alone, it's about how effectively you can build something greater than yourself. A truly powerful man does not seek to stand alone. He seeks to build a foundation that can support not only himself, but also those around him. He creates opportunities for others, fosters relationships that bring value, and ensures that his success is not temporary but sustainable. A man who refuses to build connections may achieve short-term victories, but he will struggle to maintain lasting success because he lacks the infrastructure of support that all great men rely on. In times of hardship, a man's strength is revealed by the people who stand with him. When life tests you, it is not your isolation that will carry you through. It is the relationships you have built, the people who believe in you, and the support system you have created. The most resilient men are not those who endure hardship alone, but those who have built strong enough relationships to help them weather any storm. A man who chooses to be alone deprives himself of this strength, making every challenge harder than it needs to be. Building and maintaining relationships requires effort, but the rewards far outweigh the cost. A strong network provides not only emotional support, but also opportunities, guidance, and protection. It creates an environment where growth is constant and where success is shared. A man who surrounds himself with the right people gains access to insights, strategies, and wisdom that would take him years to learn on his own. He becomes part of something bigger than himself, and through that, he becomes truly powerful.